The developer's project manager stood at the edge of my backyard with a hard hat tucked under one arm and told me something I still remember word for word. Mr. Haile, those stakes were never reliable. The road is going through here either way. He said it while a bulldozer idled less than 30 feet from the lemon trees my wife and I had planted after we retired. The road he was talking about was supposed to serve a 42-home subdivision outside Temecula, and according to him, it needed exactly 17 feet of land that had belonged to my family for 26 years. The strange part was that I had never sold him an inch. 3 days earlier, the metal property markers along our eastern boundary had disappeared. In their place were fresh pink survey flags, white stakes, and orange paint lines that cut through the corner of our lot, like somebody had taken a ruler to our retirement. My wife, Elaine, had seen the crews working near the fence after breakfast. By the time I walked out there, the old iron pin beside our irrigation box was gone. Not bent, not buried, gone. And the developer's new stakes had moved our boundary almost 18 feet toward our house. Now, I'm a retired civil engineer. I spent 34 years reading plans, checking grades, and watching people make expensive mistakes because they assumed a line on paper mattered more than the line in the ground. But I also knew something else. A property dispute can swallow years of your life if you handle it wrong. Lawyers can bill you into exhaustion. Developers can outspend you. And a company with crews, consultants, and polished sales brochures can make an ordinary homeowner feel like they're standing in front of a moving train. So I didn't yell. I didn't touch their equipment. I didn't pull up a single stake. I just took pictures. Then I called Anna, and within 6 weeks, the same company that told me their road was going through either way had its entire final subdivision map put on hold. No final map, no recorded lots, no closings, no buyers moving into those 42 brand new homes, and before they could sell a single one, they had to put our boundary markers back where they belonged, pay for an independent survey, and offer us a price for the land they had tried to take for free. I didn't stop their subdivision because I wanted revenge. I stopped it because somebody had moved the line around my home and expected me to be too old, too tired, and too broke to notice. They were wrong about all three. My name is Robert Hale. I was 68 when this happened. My wife Elaine was 65. A former elementary school librarian with the patience of a saint until somebody lied to her face. We had lived on a quiet 2-acre parcel just east of Temecula for 26 years. When we bought it, the area still felt rural. There were avocado groves nearby, horses behind split-rail fences, and enough open sky that you could actually see the stars at night. Our house wasn't fancy. It was a single-story stucco place with a red tile roof, a detached workshop, an aging pool, and a backyard that Elaine had turned into something close to a small botanical garden. We had fruit trees, raised vegetable beds, a stone patio I built myself, and a narrow gravel lane along the east side of the property that led to my workshop. That gravel lane mattered more than it looked. It was the only way I could get my truck, trailer, and tools behind the house without driving through Elaine's garden. It was also where our septic service vehicle came through once every few years. The lane ran along the eastern property line, separated from the neighboring vacant tract by a weathered post and wire fence. For years, that vacant tract belonged to an old family named the Moraleses. They had owned citrus land in the valley long before the newer homes started filling in around them. When the last of the family decided to sell, nobody on our street was thrilled, but we understood it. Land changes hands. That's life. Then a company called Red Mesa Communities bought 47 acres around us. They put up a big sign with a watercolor rendering of cream-colored houses, palm trees, walking paths, and a slogan that said, "Canyon Vista at Temecula, a new standard of hillside living." The sign showed families walking dogs beside landscape sidewalks. It showed a fountain at the entrance. It showed a little pocket park with children laughing beneath perfectly placed shade trees. What it did not show was the access road they planned to carve along the edge of my property. At first, I didn't panic. I had seen the preliminary plans during the county notice process. The proposed entrance road was close to our side fence, but it was still on the developer's side of the boundary. I submitted a comment about drainage, noise, and the need to protect our access to the workshop. A planner emailed back that the project had conditions related to grading, drainage, road construction, and final map approval. It was standard stuff. Nothing made me happy. Exactly. But I could live with it. I told Elaine, it'll be noisy for a while, then it'll be done. That was before the stakes moved. The first warning came from our dog, Baxter. He was an old yellow lab with bad hips and a deep suspicion of anybody wearing a reflective vest. One Tuesday morning in late April, Baxter started barking at the east fence. Elaine looked through the kitchen window and saw two men in survey vests walking along the boundary with a metal detector and a tripod. That wasn't unusual. Construction projects have survey crews. What was unusual was where they were walking. They were on our side of the fence. Elaine called me in the workshop. "Bob," she said, "there are men by the lemon trees. I think they're looking for something." I walked over and found one of the men crouched near the irrigation box. He had a handheld locator in one hand and a short shovel in the other. "Can I help you?" I asked. The younger one stood up quickly. "Survey crew," he said. "We're verifying control points." "On my property?" He glanced toward the track behind him, then back at me. "We're working the project boundary." That answer irritated me because it sounded like it had been rehearsed. I told him he could verify anything he wanted from the other side of the fence. But he needed my permission before entering our lot. He apologized, said they had followed an old fence line by mistake, and left. At the time, I let it go. That was mistake number 1. 2 days later, I noticed the original iron pin near the irrigation box was gone. I had known that pin for 26 years. It sat flush with the dirt beside a small chunk of concrete, almost hidden under mulch. When we bought the property, the surveyor had shown it to me. He said it was one of the controlling monuments for our parcel. I didn't touch it because you don't touch property monuments. You protect them. That afternoon, I found a fresh white stake about 17 feet farther west, closer to our house. It had orange flagging tied to the top. Somebody had written RW on it in black marker. Right of way. The road wasn't merely close to our property anymore. According to that stake, the road was now eating into it. I walked the line and found 2 more new stakes. One was just inside the edge of our gravel lane. The other sat less than 4 feet from a young Valencia orange tree Elaine had planted for our granddaughter. When I called the number on the construction sign, a receptionist transferred me to a man named Darren Pike. Darren was Red Mesa's project manager. He sounded about 40, maybe younger. He had the polished, steady tone of somebody who had spent years convincing landowners that disruption was inevitable and cooperation was a favor. I told him what I had found. He said, "Mr. Haile, our survey is based on the approved plans." I said, "Then your approved plans are showing my land as yours." There was a pause. Then he replied, "I'm sure there's an explanation." I asked him to send me the legal description they were using. He said he would look into it. Instead, the next morning, a grading foreman appeared with a clipboard and walked directly toward our gravel lane. That was when I realized this was not a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. The foreman's name was Luis. He was polite, which made the situation stranger. He told me his crew had been instructed to clear brush along the future road corridor by the end of the week. I asked him if he had a map. He handed me a laminated sheet. It was a construction exhibit, not a recorded survey. The road alignment curved up from the main street, ran beside our property, and then widened near the entrance. The shaded area labeled Public Access Improvement crossed the eastern edge of my parcel, not by an inch or 2, by 17 feet and 8 inches at its widest point. I looked at Luis and said, "That shaded area is my land." He shifted his weight. "I just build what's staked," he said. "And who staked it?" "Red Mesa's survey consultant." I asked him to stop work along our boundary until it was resolved. Luis made a call. A few minutes later, Darren Pike pulled up in a white company truck. He stepped out wearing sunglasses, boots that had never seen much mud, and the kind of expensive blue shirt that stays tucked in no matter how hot it is. He introduced himself like we were meeting at a neighborhood barbecue. Then he walked me to the new stake near the orange tree. "Mr. Hale," he said, "we understand this feels abrupt, but the project has been through planning. There are approved exhibits. This corridor has been anticipated for years." Anticipated by who? The county and the project team? That doesn't answer the question. He sighed. Not dramatically, but just enough to make it clear he thought I was slowing down his day. The road needs to meet current fire and access standards. The existing alignment requires a small adjustment near your side boundary. Small adjustment. I repeated. You moved my property marker. We did not move your property marker. Then where is it? He looked toward the irrigation box. I can't speak to what was there before our work began. I had taken photographs around that pin for years. I photographed the backyard when we installed irrigation, when we repaired the fence, when we replaced the gravel in the lane. Elaine photographed the garden every spring. We had old pictures, new pictures, drone photos from my nephew's wedding, and even a video of our grandson riding a bike beside the boundary. But Darren didn't know that. He thought he was talking to an old couple with a few fruit trees and no leverage. I told him to leave the boundary alone. He said, "We can discuss a temporary construction license if that's what you're concerned about." I said, "I'm concerned about you claiming land you do not own." That was when he gave me the line I would later repeat to Anna. "Mr. Hale, you can spend years arguing about an old pin in the dirt, or you can be practical. The road is going through here either way." It wasn't shouted. That made it worse. It was said like a fact, like the whole process had already decided we did not matter. I told him, "Nothing is going through my property today." He looked at the foreman, gave a small nod, and drove away. The crews stopped for the afternoon, but they did not remove the stakes. The next day, Red Mesa's attorney sent me a letter. It said the company believed the road corridor fell within the boundaries of its development tract. It also said that any informal monuments on my property might not be controlling evidence of the true boundary. Informal monuments. That was their language for the iron pins that had been there longer than most of their staff had been alive. The letter suggested we contact them if we wanted to discuss reasonable accommodation. I read it twice, then handed it to Elaine. She read it slowly, folded it in half, and said, "They are trying to scare us." She was right. A full boundary lawsuit would have cost money. A survey fight can turn into a title fight. A title fight can become a years-long grind where the person with the bigger budget tries to make the other side quit. And Red Mesa had a bigger budget. They had investors, lawyers, consultants, grading contractors, sales staff, and a 42-home project that they claimed would bring much-needed housing to the area. We had a retirement account, a paid-off house, and enough sense not to gamble our future on a courtroom battle without knowing exactly what we had. That evening, I called the county surveyor's office. The woman who answered was careful with her words. She said boundary disputes between private parties often required a licensed land surveyor and, if necessary, legal counsel. But she also told me something important. If you believe an existing monument has been disturbed during development work, she said, document the condition immediately and check whether the project's final map has been recorded. That last part stayed with me. The final map. I knew enough from my engineering career to understand the difference between preliminary project approval and a recorded final subdivision map. A developer can have approvals, conditions, grading plans, and tentative maps, but if the final map is not complete and accepted, the lots are not yet legally ready to be sold as separate recorded parcels. So I went online. Red Mesa's project had a tentative tract map. It had environmental documents. It had planning commission minutes. It had grading permit records. But I could not find a recorded final map. I could find proposed lot lines, I could find a roadway exhibit. I could find a condition stating that all required rights-of-way, dedications, boundary adjustments, and off-site improvements had to be completed or appropriately secured before final map recordation. I could also find something else. A lot line adjustment application from the previous year. It involved Red Mesa's tract and a narrow strip beside our parcel. The application had been submitted, but I could not see any record that it had been completed. At that point, I stopped trying to solve it alone. I called Anna. Anna Reyes lived about 20 minutes away in Murrieta. She was not a lawyer, and she never pretended to be one. What she was, more than anything, was patient. She had spent years working in land use administration before becoming an independent property records consultant. She understood maps, permit files, recorded documents, planning conditions, public records requests, and the one thing that makes powerful people nervous: a paper trail that does not match the story they are telling. I knew Anna through a neighbor whose drainage issue she had helped untangle the year before. She had a reputation for being calm in rooms where other people got loud. When she came to our house, she didn't start by making promises. She walked the boundary with me. She looked at the old fence posts. She looked at the fresh stakes. She looked at the spot where the iron pin had been. Then she asked one question. "Do you have any photographs of this area before the construction started?" Elaine almost laughed. "My husband documents everything," she said. That was not entirely unfair. We brought out folders, external hard drives, old phones, and a laptop that had seen better days. I had photos from the irrigation project 6 years earlier. Elaine had garden pictures from nearly every spring. We found a drone video my nephew had taken during a family barbecue 18 months before. In the video, the drone rose above our backyard and drifted toward the eastern boundary. For 3 seconds, you could clearly see the old fence, the gravel lane, the irrigation box, and a small circular bare patch where the iron pin sat. Anna paused the footage. Then she pulled up the current construction exhibit and compared the road line to the image. She didn't say anything for a moment. Finally, she said, "That new stake is not where their own earlier exhibit says the boundary should be." I felt my stomach tighten. "You're sure?" "I'm sure enough to verify it properly." Anna recommended an independent licensed land surveyor named Priya Nand. Priya had worked on rural parcels, commercial site, and difficult boundary retracements across Riverside County. She was blunt, meticulous, and apparently immune to intimidation. Her fee estimate was $6. Babe. That was a lot of money to us. Elaine and I talked about it for 2 nights. Then she said, "If we don't find out now, they will build the road. And after that, we'll spend the rest of our lives looking at it and wondering why we didn't fight." So we hired Priya. Anna also helped us submit public records requests for the project file. Not just the glossy plans. Everything we could reasonably request. Tentative map conditions. Correspondence about the lot line adjustment. Road dedication exhibits. Survey review comments. And any documents showing how Red Mesa intended to acquire or control the strip beside our parcel. Meanwhile, Red Mesa escalated. A different lawyer sent another letter. This one was friendlier in tone but colder in substance. It offered us $8,500 for what they called a minor corner acquisition and temporary construction access. $8,500 for 17 feet of boundary land, a portion of our only service lane, mature landscaping, and permanent noise from the entrance road. The offer also required us to sign a release, saying the company had not interfered with any existing property monument. That was the part that made Anna sit up straight. "They're trying to buy certainty before your survey is done," she said. I asked what we should do. She said, "You can reject it, but do it cleanly. Don't accuse them of a crime. Don't threaten them. Just state that you dispute their claimed boundary, you will not grant access, and you reserve all rights pending the independent survey." So that is what we did. I sent a short letter. It said Red Mesa did not have permission to enter our property, remove vegetation, use our gravel lane, or begin work within the disputed area. It said we rejected the offer and were awaiting a license boundary survey. Darren called me an hour after they received it. His voice had changed. The polished confidence was still there, but now it had an edge. "Bob," he said, "I'm trying to keep this from becoming unnecessarily expensive." "I appreciate that," I told him. "Then you should understand that delays affect a lot of people. Contractors, buyers, financing. You could be holding up an entire community over a disputed strip of dirt." "It isn't disputed dirt," I said. "It's my property until someone proves otherwise." He went quiet. Then he said, "You may not like the outcome if you force this into a formal process." I had spent most of my career around construction sites. I knew that sentence. It was not a legal argument. It was pressure. I told him, "The formal process is exactly what I want." 3 days later, Priya arrived with 2 assistants, a tripod, a GPS unit, field notebooks, and an old-fashioned metal detector. They did not begin where Red Mesa had placed its new stakes. They began far away from the disputed corner. That was the first thing Priya explained to me. "A proper boundary retracement doesn't start with the line someone wants," she said. "It starts with the original controlling evidence." For 2 full days, they searched for old monuments across surrounding parcels and road corners. They compared recorded maps, field notes, deed descriptions, and physical evidence in the ground. On the second afternoon, Priya found a buried iron pipe beneath a layer of fresh dirt and construction debris. It was not where Red Mesa's stake said it should be. It was 17 feet and 8 inches east of it, exactly where our old boundary had always been. Then she found another, and another. The original monuments lined up with our deed, the old plat map, the drone footage, and the visible history of the property. Red Mesa's newly placed stakes did not. Priya did not speculate about who had moved what. She did not need to. Her preliminary finding was enough. The road corridor shown by Red Mesa's field staking crossed onto our parcel. The company's claimed line was inconsistent with the controlling monumentation and the recorded boundary evidence she had recovered. But the real twist came from Anna's records request. The county file included a staff memo that Red Mesa had not mentioned. According to the memo, the developer's tentative map approval required them to resolve a boundary and access issue along the Hale parcel before the final map could be accepted for recordation. There had been 2 possible paths. They could obtain a voluntary acquisition from us, or they could complete a formal lot line adjustment supported by the required documents and county approval. They had done neither. Instead, they had submitted a draft exhibit suggesting the road corridor was already within their tract. The county survey review had flagged inconsistencies and asked for additional documentation. Red Mesa had responded that it was working with adjoining ownership. That adjoining ownership was us, and nobody had ever spoken to us about a legitimate sale before the stakes appeared. Anna placed the memo on our kitchen table and said, "They do not have their final map yet. They need this issue resolved before they can record it." I looked at her. "So what happens now?" She said, "Now we make sure the county sees the same evidence we do." That was the moment I knew we were no longer fighting a developer with a bigger bank account. We were dealing with a company that had built its schedule on an assumption that we would fold before anyone looked closely. Anna's plan had 3 steps. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal, nothing that required us to become experts overnight. First, Priya finalized a written survey report with photographs, coordinate data, monument recovery notes, and an exhibit showing the difference between the recorded boundary and Red Mesa's field staking. Second, Anna organized the public records into a simple timeline, not 40 pages of angry accusations. A timeline. Date: the tentative map was approved. Date: the county required boundary resolution. Date: Red Mesa submitted its incomplete lot line adjustment materials. Date: the survey crew entered our parcel. Date: the old monuments disappeared. Date: the new stakes appeared inside our boundary. Date: Red Mesa offered us $8,500 and a release. When you put it in order, the story became very hard to explain away. Third, We submitted the material to the county planning department, the county surveyor's office, and the subdivision map review staff. Our cover letter was careful. It did not say Red Mesa had committed a crime. It said there was an unresolved boundary conflict directly affecting a required road corridor, that the developer had staked and proposed construction within land we believed belonged to us, and that the county should not accept or record a final map relying on an unverified boundary condition. Anna called it giving the right people a reason to pause. That was all. We were not demanding that the county kill the project. We were asking it not to finalize a map until the developer proved it had the right to show that road where it wanted to show it. The county responded faster than I expected. Within 9 business days, a planner emailed that the final map review was under additional examination. A county survey technician requested clarification from Red Mesa regarding the boundary exhibits and the condition requiring evidence of road right acquisition. Then the construction crews disappeared from our side of the tract. The bulldozers still worked farther up the hill. Framing continued around the future model homes. But the entrance road corridor beside our house went quiet. For the first time in weeks, Elaine and I ate dinner without backup alarms beeping through the windows. Darren called again. This time, he did not threaten. He wanted to meet. Anna told us to agree, but not alone. We met at a small conference room in a title company office. Red Mesa brought Darren, an attorney, and a survey consultant. We brought Anna, Priya, Elaine, and me. The company's survey consultant began by saying there were multiple interpretations of the boundary. Priya slid her report across the table. There are not multiple controlling monument locations, she said. There are only multiple stakes. Yours are not supported by the recovered evidence. The attorney said the company had relied on available records in good faith. Anna pointed to the county memo. Then why did you offer the Hales money for an acquisition and ask them to release claims about a monument before your final map was recorded? Nobody answered immediately. Darren leaned forward. Let's be practical, he said. We need a narrow strip for a public improvement. The Hales can be fairly compensated. We can resolve this. I almost laughed. A month earlier, he had said the road was going through either way. Now he was asking to resolve it. I told him, you could have asked us before you moved stakes onto our property. He said, nobody moves stakes. Priya looked directly at him. Then your company should have no problem paying to restore the monumentation consistent with the recorded boundary. That was the first time I saw Darren lose control of his expression. Just for a second. But it was there, because by then, the issue was bigger than a strip of dirt. Red Mesa had buyers waiting. They had loan draws tied to project milestones. They had model homes nearing completion and marketing materials, already describing homes that could not be legally sold until the final map recorded. Every week of delay cost them money, and they could not pressure the county into ignoring its own condition. The company made a second offer. This one was $35. Ling, ling, ling. We declined. Not because we were trying to punish them, but because the offer still treated our land as a nuisance they could price cheaply. Anna told them any real negotiation had to include 4 things. A purchase price based on an independent appraisal, a permanent replacement access arrangement for our workshop and septic service, a professionally constructed sound and privacy buffer along the new road, and full payment of our survey, appraisal, and record review costs. The developer's attorney called it excessive. Anna answered, then don't buy the land. Restore the original boundary and redesign your road. That was the choice. They could redesign their project, or they could finally negotiate honestly. Around that point, I want to pause for a second, because this is where people sometimes get the wrong idea about stories like this. Standing your ground does not mean screaming louder than the other side. It does not mean tearing up stakes, threatening workers, or making life miserable for people who are just doing their jobs. It means knowing what is yours, documenting what happened, and refusing to let somebody's deadline become your emergency. If you enjoy stories where ordinary homeowners win with records, patience, and the law on their side, subscribe to Anna's Neighborhood Justice. And tell me this, If someone moved your property markers and called it a minor adjustment, what would be the first document you checked? For us, the answer was simple. The map, then the ground, then the county file, and once those three things agreed with each other, Red Mesa had nowhere left to hide. The final map stayed on hold for 43 days. That may not sound like much if you are thinking about a household schedule. In development, 43 days can be brutal. Red Mesa had crews scheduled, lenders watching, buyers asking questions, and a sales office full of people trying to explain why anticipated closing dates had moved. We did not celebrate that. We did not enjoy it. But we also did not apologize for it. The delay existed because they had tried to solve a land acquisition problem by pretending the land was already theirs. Eventually, the company came back with a serious proposal. They hired an appraiser, acceptable to both sides. We hired our own reviewer. The final agreement gave Red Mesa a narrow, clearly defined portion of the eastern edge of our parcel, far smaller than the area they had originally staked. The purchase price was $148. Ling, ling, ling. That included the land value, the loss of landscaping, and the impact of a public road beside our home. They also paid $11, 460 inches survey, appraisal, and document review costs. They built us a new 12-foot wide service access lane on the remaining side of our property, graded properly, surfaced with compacted base, and protected by a recorded access easement for our benefit. They installed a masonry privacy wall with sound-reducing landscaping instead of leaving us with an open road shoulder beside the garden. And most importantly, they funded a licensed surveyor to reset and protect every boundary monument around the affected corner. The old recovered pins were documented. New markers were set where appropriate. A record of survey was filed so nobody could quietly reinterpret that line again. The agreement also included something I cared about more than the money. A written acknowledgement that Red Mesa had no right to enter or perform work on our property without permission until the acquisition documents were signed and recorded. They never admitted that someone had physically moved the old markers. Their attorney was too careful for that. But they did not deny Priya's survey. They did not deny the county's final map condition. And they did not deny that their original staking had been wrong. That was enough for me. The county released the final map only after the corrected road right documents were recorded, and the map exhibits matched the resolved boundary. Red Mesa eventually sold its homes. The subdivision went forward. Families moved in. Kids rode bikes on the sidewalks. The entrance fountain ended up looking a lot smaller than it had on the sign. Life continued. But the road beside our home is narrower than Red Mesa originally intended, because the line where they wanted to take 17 feet for free became the line where they had to pay fairly. Elaine kept the orange tree. It sits just inside the new wall. A little taller now, still producing fruit every winter. One afternoon, several months after the agreement, Darren Pike came by alone. No hard hat, no lawyer, no blue shirt tucked perfectly into expensive jeans. He stood at the gate and asked if he could speak with me. I said yes. He looked toward the road, then toward the garden. I should have handled this differently, he said. That was all. No grand apology. No explanation. Just one sentence. I told him, you should have started by asking. He nodded. Then he left. And that was the end of it. I didn't become rich from that dispute. I didn't enjoy having strangers examine every corner of our property. I didn't enjoy wondering whether our retirement home would turn into a construction corridor because somebody else had made a schedule. But I learned something important. People with power often count on ordinary people being overwhelmed by paperwork. They count on you assuming that the plan has already been approved. The decision has already been made. And the people in hard hats must know more than you do. Sometimes they do. But sometimes the paperwork is incomplete. Sometimes the map is wrong. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to let somebody erase a line just because it is inconvenient for them. The developer thought our property markers were little pieces of metal in the dirt. To us, they were proof that our home still had a boundary. And once Anna helped us make that boundary visible again, their whole subdivision had to wait. I never wanted to delay 42 homes. I only wanted the people building them to stop acting like my land was already part of their project. Sometimes patience looks like weakness right up until the paperwork catches up. What would you have done first? Accepted the first offer, hired a surveyor, or gone straight to the county? Some people would say we delayed needed housing over a narrow strip of land. Others would say no project has the right to begin by moving a homeowner's boundary. Where do you draw that line? Leave your take below. This video is a dramatized storytelling narrative based on real-life themes and HOA regulations. Names, characters, and specific locations have been changed. Visuals are generated using AI tools for illustrative purposes only.